my name is Kyra Ocampo, and I will be presenting my project today. My project is treating pond water by the flocculation method while also using sulfuric acid. And you may be wondering, what exactly is flocculation? Well, flocculation is pretty much isolating different particles in the water so the water doesn't look as murky and cloudy. While using also sulfuric acid, which is the other part of my experiment, is helping to make the substance of flocculation, which is alum, is to help make the reaction more quicker and more available. So that is the end of my introduction. Do you have any questions?
Um, why did you choose to do this project?
Oh, great question. So, the reason why I decided to do this project was because since middle school, I've been very curious about water quality. I've been in my robotics team, which is when we had to deal with a field and solve a problem with purifying water or doing something with water, and it was also my GT project. So it just automatically popped up right in my head. And before I did other methods of purifying water, which is like through other ways of filtering, like through like porous limestones or other types of methods. I've never done a flocculations, which I decided to do this time. So that inspired me.
Okay.
Mhm.
And what kind of help did you need to complete the project?
So I actually required a lot of different help. I had help from my robotics teacher who helped supply me with materials and be sure that I actually did the circuitry right. I also had help from an environmental science teacher who be sure my procedures were correct and like the elements I used. I also had help from a chemistry teacher to be sure that the chemicals that I used, since I used sulfuric acid, it's a highly dangerous chemical. I just be sure she gave me supervision and be sure that I was doing all procedures right and I was being as safe as I could be. And I also got help from another science teacher who helped me gather other material and science equipment to be sure I had everything I necessarily need.
Okay. And what was the most difficult part?
Um, The most difficult thing I would say is my procedures. Since I did deal with a lot of dangerous or other errors that could have occurred. I wanted to be sure that I followed everything to a T, and even if other people wanted to copy my project or learn from it more, I made sure my directions were perfection. I made sure that they told you step by step of what to do and where to go so that all dangers could be avoided, like luck. Loads of procedures to be sure that if you do try this, it would go correctly.
Okay. Um, did anything surprise you or anything unexpected happen while throughout the project?
So, the most surprising thing that happened to me was how well my actual substances worked. I never realized or figured how my actual substances was work with like the alum. I had no idea it would react the way it did since when I added it to the water, it made like the water all like cloudy and mercury at the bottom instead of making it all around it. It centered it at a certain point. And then like the sulfuric acid, it made sped things up so much faster. And like if you look at my tables, the difference is kind of outstanding. Like I was pretty amazed.
What was the purpose of your?
So, with my purpose, I developed it over a series of things, like looking at real world situations. Since right now we are kind of in a water crisis, even though the world is majority made up of water, we don't have a lot of clean water to drink, and it's very limited. It's literally 1% of the world. And so, I wanted to find other different methods of purifying water with flocculation, since usually you deal with like filtering water and other different ways and categories and so many steps with it. I wanted to focus on one way and also with like using filtration. with it, I wanted to do a more focused point. Since a lot of different energies and materials could be used, I wanted to make sure everything was practical and minimal.
And how did you form the question your research was supposed to answer? Or, like, what kind of background information did you use?
So the research that I did to actually develop my question was, since I did know and like be kinda in the field of water purification, I've met a lot of different companies over my time. I met with like Edward Aquifer, Assaz, and Aqua with Equala that had different methods of purifying water, but none of them really stuck out to me, and I wanted to try my own different way, which is why I developed the question how flocculation could develop and help purifies pond water. And so I just learned it from that way because like other companies, they did like other methods like Edward Aquifer, they used porous limestone, they used environment. While Equala, they created a little kit that you could use. They used electricity and metal to help conduct the different particles and make it react and attach to the metals instead of having them float around. I wanted to work with something like that, but make it more my style and more easily accessible.
How did you choose your variables or use them to collect your data?
So the variables that I used to collect my data was I used the variables of the different substances like alum, which was used to help the actual flocculation of it, and I used sulfuric acid as the variable to help made up the reaction quicker. I also used the variable of pond water with either adding it with the substances or not. And I made sure that the pond water came from the same place the same day so no other errors could have occurred. And I was just careful with everything. And it helped me to even go more in depth with my tables and other information.
If you were to do the project again, what would you do differently or how far would you take it?
So, if I were to do this project differently, I would want to expand more upon it, like take it more farther into the future. If I were to do it differently, I would like instead of doing it with one area of pond and like expanding that and checking the quality of that area, I will look at other different ponds and any other bodies of water across San Antonio because I want to get accurate data on how alum sulfuric acid could benefit the water. So even going more further into the field, I wanted to see it like not just in San Antonio but build out more. Maybe create my own little kit like what Ecola does and just help build more and expand more upon it, since I would like this to actually help out the world situation of the water crisis.
How strong was the relationship between your variables?
It's kind of surprising, but the relationship through my variables was pretty strong. I never knew how alum and sulfuric acid were going to interact with each other because one of them, alum, it's literally a spice you could get at HEB. So I was like, okay, maybe this might help. And then sulfuric acid, it's a dangerous chemical. You'd be like, oh, dangerous, careful. But they actually worked well together since the alum did actually work really fast and quickly with gathering up all the substances and making it in one place and concentration in one another. And then the sulfuric acid helped speed it up more since it needed to be conducted quicker and just be sure it was all like centralized.
How certain are you of your results and what do they imply?
I am very content with my results. I think that they're very accurate and they did well. Since I did over 20 trials of the data, I collected the data in both day and night, which is like light and dark to signify pond water in the light, pond water in the night. So the data I collected over the 20 trials was all pretty different from one another, even though that they may have been all in one day. And then this is the comparison with them all. I was able to actually see the difference of it and actually see the physical difference and appearance of the difference of what the substances actually did, since I was able to see how the alum reacted, how the sulfuric acid reacted to it. I was actually able to visibly see. And it helps contribute to my conclusion since it showed that I was able to accept my conclusion. Since my conclusion was the pond water would flocculate better with alum sulfuric acid in the night, which was true. If you look at my data table, it was true. Since it's low, you can barely see it. It being low shows a low resistance, and you want a low resistance, meaning that the water was clear and the light was able to pass through, and meaning that this flocculation worked, and it was very accurate since you want it to be around 500s, and which is what it was around.
How was your research influenced by other research studies?
My research was influenced on the different methods that are currently available, like the porous limestone. Like that was cool and all, but I wanted to try a different method. And the flocculation, a lot of people do with electricity or another method of conducting it. I used electricity in a different way, just to power the light to go through. And I wanted to use an actual substance instead of another technology because I wanted it to be easily accessible and easy to grab and use just for anyone. It's also very inexpensive, so I think that's a plus side for me. So I just wanted to learn from what other companies did and not make it smaller, but make it more accessible for everyone, since I would like everyone to just check how their water is, because if it's like bad quality, you don't know what that could do to yourself if you accidentally drink it, if you actually step foot in it, what damages or sickness could occur to you.
What are the practical implications of your research?
Everything was practical. Everything was easily accessible. Like alum, it's a spice. If you didn't know, it's used for like cooking or something. It's at your local HEB. It's $2, I think. And then you have like sulfuric acid. Look at your local science store. Just be sure you're careful with it and have adult supervision, since it is dangerous. Be sure you are just careful. You wear gloves so it doesn't get on you, and just be safe with it. And like other materials, like the circuitry that I built with a breadboard, you necessarily don't have to. Just find some sort of light passage to see, because this was all built to measure it. But if you just want to see how clean or dirty your water is, just hold it up to a light and see what could actually occur, and see if you are able to look through it or not.
What factors limited your ability to generalize your results?
So, like, what I would say limited was like the amount of pond water that I actually like checked upon, because I had loads of easily accessible alum sulfuric acid, but I only checked one pond, which is great because I was able to see that pond, but I wasn't able to look upon other areas in San Antonio and see how flocculation of alum and sulfuric acid can benefit more of the world. It was able to help out that one pond, and I know how clean that pond is. It's fairly clean. It's dirty, but it's not that dirty. That's why ducks and other organisms live there. But I would like to check out more other rivers, places, bodies of water around San Antonio, just to see how they could affect the different environments that we are in.
And related to the previous question, what factors could have impacted your data or like changed it around?
So factors or like human errors that could have occurred was when I was collecting the pond water. I collected it all one day, since I just needed the amount that I needed was like a gallon or so, and I was able to collect all of that at once. But if I were to collect it at different days, I didn't know what the organisms or anyone passing by could have done, because like the human organisms or the animal organisms could have excreted waste into it. They could have digested or done something else in the water that could have affected it differently. So I was lucky enough to get it all in one day. Another thing that could have caused difficulty was circuitry. When I was adding all in the jumper wires, the LEDs, the philosopher, to be sure that my equipment was good and I was able to check on it, that it works. I got it from my robotics teacher, so I knew that everything works and was like pre-used. But if it wasn't, it would have been damaged and my data wouldn't be accurate, which I lucky enough was able to know it was.
And Last question. What specific techniques, or equipment did you use and how did they contribute?
So, like I said, I used a lot of different equipment from my robotics team or the robotics teacher, like a breadboard, jumper wires, LED light, a philosopher, a multimeter to collect data and see the light. The light that goes through. I was also able to use a mini weight, which is able to like measure the amounts of like different types of alum that I use, and also like graduated cylinder to check the water that I used. And I also built my own little homemade mixing device to actually stir the cups all at once to be sure that they're all accurate when I check out the different trials. And that concludes the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening and have a good day.